Play jazz music tonight. Or meet the Axeman. He was a phantom who carved his name into history with a blade. A sadist who claimed he would spare those who danced to his tune. But who was this faceless executioner? A monster? A musician? Or something worse? The reign of terror is about to begin again. This is the Axeman of New Orleans. Are you brave enough to face the truth? Follow POV Archive now to unlock the darkest chapter of the Crescent City.
You are now standing in the heart of New Orleans in the year 1918. Take a deep breath. Feel the heavy, humid southern air filling your lungs, carrying the faint, distant rhythm of brass horns and ragtime piano from the French Quarter. But do not let the music fool you. Beyond the warm glow of the street lamps lies a city suffocating in fear. Imagine the voice of an old archivist whispering in your ear, guiding you through the dark alleys of a town about to be claimed by a phantom. It is the early morning hours of May 23rd, 1918. You step up to a small, quiet home on the corner of Upper Line and Magnolia Streets. This is the residence of Joseph and Catherine Maggio, hard-working Italian grocers. As you peer through the darkness, you notice something sinister at the back door. A lower wooden panel has been meticulously chiseled away. Stepping inside, the silence is deafening. The intruder brought no weapon of his own. Instead, he searched the premises, found the family's own woodshed axe, and carried it into the bedroom. You watch the shadows flicker as the killer strikes. Joseph and Catherine never have a chance to scream. Their throats are slashed with a razor blade, and their skulls fractured with the heavy blade of the axe. When the killer finishes, he leaves the blood-stained axe right there on the floor, takes nothing of value, and slips out into the humid night. The blood has barely dried, and the killer has just claimed his first victims. The nightmare of the Axeman has officially begun. Step forward in time to June 27th, 1918. The summer heat in Louisiana is suffocating, and the panic across New Orleans is rising. You find yourself standing outside a bakery and grocery shop at the intersection of Dorgenois and Lahar Streets. The air is thick with the scent of flour, yeast, and stale sweat. Inside live Louis Bessemer and his companion, Harriet Lowe. Look closely at the rear door. Just like a month prior, a bottom wooden panel has been cleanly carved out with a chisel. A small hand reached through, unlocked the door, and slipped silently into the dark room. You step through the broken frame. The bedroom is pitch black, but the faint sound of heavy breathing fills the air. The intruder reaches into the shadows, grabs Bessemer's own hatchet, and steps toward the sleeping couple. Without a word, the blade strikes. A brutal blow fractures Louis Bessemer's skull. Harriet Lowe is hit directly in the side of her head, leaving her partially paralyzed. As the killer flees into the night, he leaves the bloody hatchet inside the kitchen sink. Bessemer miraculously survives, but as Harriet lies dying in the hospital, a strange twist turns the investigation into madness. In her feverish, fading state, she accuses Bessemer himself of being a German spy and the man who attacked her. Paranoia sweeps the city. Is it a lone madman, a spy ring, or something far worse? Before the police can piece together the clues, Harriet Lowe dies from her wounds, and Louis Bessemer is dragged off to jail in handcuffs. But while he sits behind bars, the real phantom proves he is still loose in the dark. Fast forward to the sweltering night of August 5th, 1918. Louis Bessemer is still locked inside a jail cell, yet you are about to witness the ultimate proof that the wrong man is behind bars. You stand in front of a modest residence on Elmira Avenue. The air is heavy, still, and pregnant with dread. Inside this home lies Mrs. Edward Schneider, a 28-year-old woman who is 8 months pregnant. Her husband is working late, leaving her completely alone in the quiet house. Focus your eyes on the back door. The phantom's signature mark appears once again, a wooden panel neatly chiseled away in the dead of night. Slip inside quietly. Mrs. Schneider wakes up in the pitch darkness, sensing a presence in her room. Before she can even open her mouth to scream, a dark, looming figure towering over her bed brings down a heavy weapon. Repeated blows crush her scalp, leaving her face covered in blood. The attacker vanishes through the dark hallway, leaving her for dead. Hours later, her husband returns home to a scene of sheer horror. Miraculously, despite severe skull fractures, Mrs. Schneider survives the brutal attack and gives birth to a healthy baby girl just a few weeks later. But she remembers almost nothing, only a dark shadow looming over her in the light of the moon. Only 5 days later, on August 10th, 1918, the killer strikes again. You move to the home of Joseph Romano, an elderly Italian man living with his 2 nieces, Pauline and Mary. You hear a sudden, violent commotion from the bedroom. The 2 young girls wake up to the horrific sound of blows and a man groaning in agony. As they rush into their uncle's room, they catch a fleeting glimpse of the killer, a tall, dark-skinned man wearing a light-colored fedora and a dark coat, stepping quietly out into the backyard. Joseph Romano is bleeding heavily from 2 massive axe wounds to his head. He dies in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. The entire city of New Orleans collapses into total hysteria. People begin seeing shadows at every window. Men take turns standing guard on their porches with shotguns, waiting for a monster that seems to walk through walls.
Fast forward to the early spring of March 10th, 1919. Months have passed since the attack on Joseph Romano, and an eerie, uneasy silence had fallen over New Orleans. Some believed the monster had fled. They were dead wrong. You are now in Gretna, Louisiana, just across the Mississippi River from New Orleans. The night air is cold and crisp. You stand outside the home of Charles Cortimiglia, an Italian grocer who lives with his wife, Rosie, and their tiny 2-year-old daughter, Mary. Look at the back door. The deadly pattern repeats. A wooden panel has been silently carved out. Step inside. A sudden, piercing scream shatters the silence of the night. You rush into the bedroom to witness a nightmare. Charles Cortimiglia is lying on the floor, his skull shattered by an axe. Rosie is cornered against the wall, covered in blood, clutching little Mary in her arms. The killer shows no mercy. He strikes Rosie repeatedly, and a single, brutal blow from the axe strikes the infant child. When neighbors break down the door, they find a scene of utter carnage. Charles and Rosie survive their catastrophic head wounds, but 2-year-old Mary dies instantly in her mother's arms. In her grief-stricken, delirious state, Rosie accuses her elderly neighbors, Frank and Orlando Giordano, claiming they committed the crime over a business rivalry. Despite a total lack of physical evidence, both men are arrested and sentenced, one to death, one to life in prison. The true killer is still out there, watching the town tear itself apart. Then, 3 days later, on March 13th, 1919, a letter arrives at the offices of the Times-Picayune newspaper.
Imagine reading the ink written by the killer himself. Hell, March 13th, 1919. They have never caught me, and they never will. They have never seen me, for I am invisible, even as the ether that surrounds your earth. I am not a human being, but a spirit and a demon from the hottest hell. I am what you Orleanians and your foolish police call the Axeman. The letter ends with a chilling ultimatum. On Tuesday night, March 19th, at precisely 12:15 a.m., the Axeman will ride across the city again. He will strike down anyone he pleases, with one single exception. He promises to spare any house where a jazz band is playing.
You step into the night of Tuesday, March 19th, 1919. The air in New Orleans is buzzing, not with quiet terror, but with a deafening wall of sound. Close your eyes and listen. Every window, every parlor, every dim-lit saloon is exploding with music. Professional brass bands blast melodies into the foggy streets. Amateur musicians strum banjos on front porches. Record players spin ragtime tunes at maximum volume. Nobody dares to let the music stop. The entire city of New Orleans has transformed into one massive, desperate orchestra, playing for their very lives. The clock strikes 12:15 a.m. The minutes tick by in agonizing tension. But the Axeman keeps his word. Not a single door is broken, not a single axe is raised, and not a single drop of blood is spilled that night. Jazz saved the city. Months pass, and the frenzy slowly dies down, until the crisp autumn evening of October 27th, 1919. You stand outside a small home on Jamaica Avenue. Inside, Mike Pepitone, a father of 6 and a local grocer, is fast asleep in his bed. Look down at the back door. The deadly signature is back one final time, the carved-out wood panel. You hear the sudden, horrifying thud of steel hitting bone. Mrs. Pepitone wakes up in a panic and rushes into her husband's room, just in time to see a dark figure holding a bloody axe darting out into the darkness. Mike Pepitone lies fatally wounded, his blood soaking the mattress. He dies shortly after in the hospital. And then, total silence. The murder of Mike Pepitone marks the end of the rampage. The Axeman vanishes into thin air, leaving no identity, no confession, and no trace behind. Rosie Cortimiglia later recants her false testimony, freeing the innocent Giordano men. But the true identity of the monster remains lost to the shadows of history forever. Take a breath. You step out of the dark streets of 1888 and 1919, leaving the cold cases of the past behind until the next time the archive opens.